Hi everybody, my name is Jessica Holyfield. I'm a professional dancer, professional dance choreographer, and dance educator based out of the southeast of the United States. And I just hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is super cool. I'm very excited about it because that means that I'm able to become a YouTube partner and actually be able to provide more opportunities for people who want more access to different things, recommendations, things of that nature. So I'm very excited about it. And I also thought this would be a really good time to kind of tackle a couple of questions that some of you guys had in the comments, either about me as a personal dancer or as some of the terminology that I've been using in some of my videos. I thought that other people may have the same questions, so I wanted to go ahead and ask them. So some of these questions I'm going to, I'll be tagging the people who asked them in my description, but some of these questions I will not be tagging people because some of them are a little interesting in the sense of they may not be the nicest in intention, but also I think that they're important to answer as well. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with our first question. The first question is about being very music sensitive. Could you explain in what ways does this affect how you enjoy performance? How would you define musicality? So for myself, when I use the term music sensitive, what I mean is that the music or the backbeat or the music itself, I value very, very much just as important as the content that a dancer chooses to perform with or a choreographer chooses to choreograph to. So I view them as equals. And a lot of times choreographers prefer the content over the music, and the music's just kind of there as an accessory, and some people value the music over the content sometimes. And I know sometimes I can be in that category. So that's what I mean by being music sensitive, is that your music choice really plays a bigger factor in whether or not the content that you're presenting is justified with your music choice. Like, I really do care about that. Now, do sometimes I feel that takes too much of a forefront from what I'm looking at? Yes, I would say Deep and Dop's Mega Crew is a prime example of an area that I had to grow in very quickly. Of, you know, I could have really looked at their content a little bit more, or understood the background of their music more, but you guys helped me with that, and I was able to give a second look at that Mega Crew, which I'm very thankful for, so thank you for that. But the next question within that question that I said was, how do you define musicality? So there are a couple different versions to what musicality means. I will tell you what it means in a dance context for myself and how I teach students and how I learned it. There are various subcategories of what can make up musicality. And there's another question later that I'll get into, which explains my background with music especially, that helps refine this question too. So musicality a lot of times is split up into kind of two sections, right? You can consider it like an umbrella term almost, where you have your layers. So if you treat a song, like a funny analogy is if you treat a song like an onion, right? An onion has layers. If you've ever seen Shrek, that's what the reference is from. Onions have layers, songs have layers, right? So there's so many different, if you watch somebody like Charlie Puth, right? If you watch somebody create a song with all these different layers of sounds, that is, each one of those sounds has something called timbre, or it's a sound context. So how does the sound come across? Some sounds sound like it's in a hollow room. That's a little creepy, right? Or some sounds sound like they're happening in a concert hall, or they're in a studio, or some instruments, tonal color. That stems from more so the sound context of an instrument. So we know that an electric piano sounds different than a grand piano, right? And so for me, musicality is the feeling or the connection and relationship between the content that a dancer does or a choreographer choreographs and the music, and what makes up the dynamics of the music as well, right? So and each one has their own subtle vocabulary differences too, but that's kind of like my simple broad version of it. There's so many other like analytical approaches I could take to explaining musicality, and I hope that I have the privilege of doing that in future videos, but that is how I would in general speak on musicality in a dance context within my scope as a dancer and teacher. That's how I teach it. And there's other ways that you can choose to explore musicality. So that's not really what I'm answering. I'm answering what is musicality? The relationship between the dancer or the person who is performing or dancing, or the choreographer and the music. It's the relationship of that. So yeah, I hope I helped answer that question. And then there's a secondary question. It says, outside of the show, so right now I am reacting to Street Woman Fighter Season 2. If you haven't checked that out, I got a whole load of them already uploaded, and I'm excited to share my perspective with you guys about it. Do you have any choreographies or dancers with musicality you admire? Wow, that's like, I'm not used to being asked these types of questions, so I'm actually really excited to answer this one. So I would say, I do have some recommendations. Some of them are pretty well known as of right now, but this has motivated me to want to look deeper into other people that I follow on Instagram. There is a choreographer that I really appreciate his concepts, and his name is Fernando. I can try to attach his description or tag his account on Instagram here in the description of this video. But I have been astronomically inspired by him, because what he's done is he's taken shoes and he's attached it to a board, and he's allowed this anti-gravity effect to happen. It's like, it feels like moving art almost. He's not the first person that has done something like this, but it's the first one who's done it in this way. For me, like with group stuff, to me, you know, of course there's probably other people who've done it before, but for me, that's somebody that I've really caught inspiration off of. So his name's Fernando. His last name escapes me, but that's one of them. I would say somebody, when it comes to choreography themselves, I really respect Sean Liu because of his investment in the culture and the communities and people who are also a part of the community, at least here in America. And I also really love his attention to, I've said this in another video, I think it was with Casey Rice's video, because Casey Rice and Sean Liu partner often. And I have done a reaction to one of the routines that they've done together. And I really love the fact that he makes the choice when he wants to integrate himself in his music, not the other way around. And I love that. And I think it shows a great sense of maturity. And he's one of the few that I've seen go from a professional dancer into a professional artist, professional choreographer, entrepreneur. Like, seeing him really thrive and bloom into this incredible individual with an amazingly innovative perspective, and I love watching him, and I love seeing the intimacy of his craft. So that would be like a super well-known person that I really like watching his content. I will say one of my favorite educators or people who teach their content would be Chris Martin. I really love how Chris Martin choreographs, but not only that, I love how he explains his movement when he teaches it, especially in beginner and intermediate classes he does. I really love watching how he teaches, and I strive to want to teach the way that he does sometimes. And his counterpart, it would be Larkin. They both were founders of Project Home, which is a great organization that you can look at. I love what Project Home has done. I love Larkin's perspective of movement, and just there's like a whole pocket of movers and dancers and choreographers in that little pocket of Project Home, where you have Chris Martin and Larkin, and then there's Henny Kim. I really love her movement as well. I know she's done some stuff with Taryn Chang recently, and she's done stuff with Project Home as well. So those people just at the very top of my head, that's who I would answer for that question. And some of them are very well known, and then some of them may be well known, but just in a different avenue of the dance world that may not be recommended in your algorithm on Instagram, YouTube, what have you. So that's how I would answer that question. Thank you for asking that, and it's always really fun. And I want to hear from you guys too, if there's any people in particular that you're really drawn by on a musicality sense as well. So the next question that I have is, do I actually watch the episodes of Street Woman Fighter 2? The answer is no, I do not watch the full episode. The reason why is because I not only do I not want to get docked with copyright, I'm always impressed when there's other YouTubers who are able to upload the full episode without getting docked, because even for me doing excerpts, I always feel like I'm walking on a minefield, you know, of like there's certain songs copyrights that, you know, in Street Woman Fighter they have exclusive songs for the show, so I can't put too many of those in one video or I'll block it. Like that happened for the middle group, and it happened for, there was another one. When I tried to do all the battles together, YouTube said no thank you, at least to me. So I'm always impressed when people can do that. So I don't watch it partially for, well, at least I don't react to the full episode. And then secondly, I really want to make sure I try to observe and analyze the routines and provide feedback for the routines as authentically as possible, but also as objectively as I possibly can. I'm a human, right? And so a lot of times we can get swayed by emotions. And so I want to make sure that I alleviate or eliminate as many negative emotions. And we know that Mnet has done a fabulous job of their editing. And I do say that sarcastically sometimes, you know, they can present a very dramatic perspective to certain situations. And so I want to kind of alleviate as much as that as possible, just so I feel that I'm able to look at it as objectively as I can. But also, even then, sometimes if I'm watching previous routines of theirs, it is difficult for me to not do a comparison between what they've done previously to now. And sometimes that's not fair, you know? And so I'm growing in that area. And I love the fact that you guys are so gracious to me in that too. So that would be how I would answer that question. Is the answer is no, I don't watch the actual episodes, but it also gives an opportunity for a lot of people who understand the context of the show way better than I ever would to give context behind what I'm watching. Because I feel like I learn so much more whenever I hear from you guys directly versus trying to find the information myself sometimes, you know, at least in that way. And then a sub question to that is unrelated, but what do I think about the difference in approach to dance by the Korean crews versus the foreign crews? Basically like dancing to lyrics versus the beat. So I actually subtly answered this with the Deep and Dot Mega crew, like taking a rewatch, because for me, all I can do is speak upon myself personally, and I don't think I've had enough conversations with people who are a part of the Korean culture, who are in the dance field or are colleagues of mine. I haven't had enough conversations to know if they prefer lyrics over beats, but I know I'll answer this by speaking towards myself. For me, I love listening to tone. So the lyrics could be the best lyrics in the world, but if the tone to me doesn't feel right, like if the tone really catches me, like I can't relate to how it's being said, or like the vibrato or that kind of stuff, it is hard for me to invest in the song. I also with the beats, my preference in genre would be like classical with like synth and new school nuances treaded in it. So I like innovative music. Like I love indie music. I love a lot of music, but my absolute favorite is like really classical music. Like Tokyo Myers is a great example, and I'll attach his link in the description too. Tokyo Myers, he takes like Claire de Lune and then he adds Bloodstream by Ed Sheeran to it, but he does it in this really cool, innovative way live, and I love that. I love stuff like that. But that's instrumental too, right? You know? And so for me, I feel more impacted by tone more so than lyrics for myself. Now, do I know why? I haven't quite studied that enough, but this is a newer question for me. Like I've never really thought about this, so I hope to find a more clear answer in the future. So I appreciate you guys who asked this question. I appreciate you asking, because it's put a seed in my brain to like really be thinking through and asking that question for myself, and possibly asking my students that question too. And then I can say too, there is a chance that maybe people who, like, I would say an example, you could focus more on lyrics when you're choreographing sometimes if the wordplay is really good, you know, or if there's like a particular phrasing and how they phrased it with the tone, it catches you like, oh, I want to make sure I choreograph to that, or I want to dance and hit that part of the lyricism, right? Like there's like with rap, lyric heavy rap, like Eminem is a great example. He focuses more on his lyricism, and it takes more of the forefront than the backbeat because it's more of a repetitive track, right? But that's the hip-hop sound, and that's a completely different video we can get into, and it is so much more than what I just said, I promise. But it's just a sometimes songs are structured to where the lyrics or the words carry more value or weight than the music behind it. But then you also have it the other way around, where how the words are being spoken and the instrumentation matter more than the lyrics being said. And then sometimes there's no lyrics, and sometimes there's just lyrics, right? Or just words. So I think those things carry a huge volume as well. But whenever you're listening to a song that you don't know the words to, or it is a different language and you love it, but for me, I have to go through the tone and the backbeat first, right? But then if I really like it and I want to choreograph to it, I'm going to look up the lyrics so I can understand the translation. And that's when I really think through the lyrics as well, you know? But So I'm going to be very honest. I personally cannot answer that question to the best of like as accurately as you may have wanted, but I can speak on, I do prefer the beat and the tone over the lyrics, but the lyrics are just as important too, in the grand scheme of when you choreograph or when you dance. Like, it's really important to know what you're listening, like what are the words behind what's being said. You don't want that to fall on deaf ears. Just like if somebody is really dancing their heart out, you don't want just the content to be overlooked, right? Because of what they're wearing, right? And sometimes of course you get into the subjectiveness of everything, and that's not the point of the question, but that's how I can answer that question best. So I apologize if it's not as articulate or if it's not as in-depth as the expectation. I will try to find that answer over this journey of dance, because I think it's a great question. My next question is, what is your actual scope as a dancer? What jobs do I actually do, and what do I study? So I am a dance, so we're going to go through. So a professional dancer, I have auditioned for shows like Jabberwockies. Jabberwockies had a show for their Vegas shows, like a TV show. I auditioned for that and I made it through to like an interview. I auditioned for So You Think, got a call back for that, but didn't quite make it to the live shows for that. I've auditioned for K-pop star, funnily enough, but I didn't have a chance to show off my dancing. I really wish I could, but I did an audition for Jellyfish Entertainment as well. So I've done some K-pop auditions in my heyday. And so those are like at the top of my head. I've danced for some music videos, I've choreographed for some music videos, but more like local artists. So I haven't done like Beyonce or anything like that, and I'm okay with that, you know. And I've just been very thankful for the opportunities I have had, just to be able to create concept videos for artists and to be able to audition as well. I think that's really important thing to experience. I've auditioned for Disney as well. They had a villain show. It's like 5 years ago. I didn't make it past the first round because I thought it was more hip hop, but it was more like a Fosse jazz. So for me, I'm gonna blame it on false advertising on Disney's part, but also, I mean, you win some, you lose some, right? I wasn't what they were looking for. That's okay too. Totally fine. So I've kind of dabbled in a little bit of everything. So that is like, as a professional dancer, I've done a lot of auditions. I've taken a lot of classes. I've taken classes in LA. I've also been able to have opportunities to represent ambassadors for studios as well as for brands or online dance brands. So I'm not going to really get into that just from the sensitivity of it, but yeah, so I've done like a wide range. Now, would I consider myself a professional dancer on the same level as I consider myself a dance educator? No, because I've done much more studying as a dance educator. Going into a choreographer, most of my scope as a choreographer stems from studios. So in America, because I can really only attest to America, but I know it's all across the world, Europe, you know, Asia, Africa. I know that everywhere has this, but in America, where I live, we have studios, right? So it's like competitive studios. So we have some studios that are recreational, meaning that they just participate and take class for the fun, and they perform on stage for an annual recital. So a recital is like a showcase of what you've learned throughout the year. So most of my choreography is competitive choreography, where I set choreography on competitive dance studios, and they compete with that choreography to conventions, and other judges who are industry professionals in different realms, like at Disney or LA or music videos or backup dancing, professional dancing, what have you, a wide range, or dance educators, and they adjudicate it. And so I've been very fortunate to be able to grow dancers authentically within the styles that they are representing, street style based, and have them compete it in a convention, and they're able to do pretty well. I'm not going to sit here and say like, here's all the things that we've won, because it doesn't matter, right? Because the what I'm reacting to is not this would win first if they did this, this, and this. You know, I think the only time I said something like that was with Jam Republic's Mega Crew, but that was also tied into, I think it was smart that they didn't go with Royal Family, because Kirsten, I feel it's important that she needs to make a name for herself with her crew, Jam Republic, and not be so tied to Royal Family. And I don't want there to always be that comparison, because I don't think it's fair to Jam Republic. But that's a side note entirely. But going back, like have I choreographed for the most notable K-pop groups. No, I haven't done skeleton crews. I haven't done those things like that, but I've had conversations with people who have, right? And I think it's important to note that I'm able to really understand more of that kind of world from people who have lived that. And I'm very thankful that I get to hear about those things without experiencing for myself sometimes, because that feels it may take away from the time that I'm investing in my own community, you know. But I do think it's important to experience a lot of these things for yourself, and that's going to give you the most authentic opinion that you can have, or the most objective opinion, because you have real world experience to back that, right? And so with choreography, that's my main scope within that. Just a complete side note, as a dance educator, I'm gonna add on, I am an adjudicator as well. So I am affiliated with Hip Hop International. I am a national certified judge at this point in time with the organization. And I will say, to be very transparent with you, I really struggled through watching the Mega Cruise, because the term Mega Crew is coined from Hip Hop International. That was the organization that really brought that term to a competitive division standard, right? And that's where, when I bring up Royal Family, it's because they really put their name on the freaking map through the HHI circuit. They are the most decorated mega crew out of all the mega crews, hands down, by years. So it's really it's really cool to see a full circle moment for me to be able to watch Kirsten in this light, because it's different than what I've seen her in up until this point, which is awesome. All that to say, I've struggled with the mega crews to a certain extent, because I really didn't want to project what HHI standards of what mega crews are supposed to do in the criteria onto this for Street Woman Fighter, because they are not the same thing, and they're also looking for different things, and it's not appropriate for me to sit here and go through the entire criteria of HHI, because I am not, when I react to these, I am Jessica Holyfield, just reacts. I am not Jessica who's on the panel for HHI watching these. And so I think that's been my really big indicator as well. On with Mega Crews, I feel like they were the biggest struggle, because I had to think through and look past the term Mega Crew to just look at, okay, this really large group that's competing with this criteria. I had to look at it like if it was Body Rock or Vibe, right? Where it's like your concept really plays a huge role in your score. And but because Mega Crew was the coined term for it, it was really hard for me to separate that. So I do apologize for that kind of struggle for myself if some of the things that I said had, like, my reasoning was a bit strange. Is because I was combating that kind of standard. And this is another side note too. I am not representing HHI with these videos. I'm not. I'm representing myself. I will not react to HHI videos for the entire time that I am certified with them. For the respect of the crews that I do in fact adjudicate, it is keeping it private between me and the crews. For the feedback that is provided for their routines. So I want to make that note very clear, especially if you're somebody who is with HHI. I'm not representing HHI with these. I do have a certification, and that is I'm just speaking on, that is my judging background. It is still very limited. I'm still very new to that realm. I have studied those routines extensively, that structure of routine extensively. So that's where most of my mind has been saturated in, but my actual real world judging experience with the organization is still very limited, and I'm excited to keep going with them. But I thought that was really important to note that that I do adjudicate, and that is the scope in which I do. That can possibly influence how I view certain routines within this scope when there's certain verbiage or vocabulary used in it. But yeah. And then as an educator, I am in charge of curriculum for 3 different studios, as well as I hold conversations with people in the industry. I ask people questions on what they feel is missing in the dance education in America, and so I like to have conversations with people and see what they would do to kind of help. And I'm talking like people who are collegiate level educators for popping, people who are who are professors at universities, people who are in the convention circuit, people who are fellow colleagues in the realm of that I'm in. But also part of my education is I am actively studying music cognition, music psychology, music theory. I'm working alongside a couple of professors, testing out different experiments and research case studies with my own dancers to try to better understand how can I grow dancers to be artists without having to compromise themselves as artists, right? Because a really big thing that I've noticed in the studio world, and I can only speak on my personal experience, is that a lot of dancers cannot explain why they make the choices they do in improvisation, and they also don't understand sometimes a choreographer's intention behind why they chose to do what they do. Some of it stems from the teachers and the fact that we struggle to find that information for ourselves, but also it stems from the educational structure of the studio. So for me, one of my things I'm astronomically passionate about is integrating music and making music as much of a priority in the education of a dancer as the dance technique, because I feel that if dancers are able to understand why a song makes them feel sad, or why a song is nostalgic to them, or why a song reminds them of a time in their life, I feel like we're able to communicate more effectively if I as a choreographer present information to a dancer and say, hey, this song reminds me of a time where I spent with my dad, driving in a car. We were just, enjoying the scenery, and they're able to relate to that, but also they are able to take and understand different music theory things, understanding what timbre means, understanding what pitch and rhythm and tempo mean. Even though we're told those things, we're not able to explain them well. So being able to give them the opportunity to understand why things are called what they're called, and there's some scientific reasoning behind certain song structures and commonalities between what makes sad music sound sad, right? Or why does lullaby sound creepy and scary and scary movies? Things like that, just being able to give them opportunities to find these answers and be curious. So whenever I'm no longer alongside them, because I'm only going to be a teacher for them for a season of their life, right? I wish I could be with them forever, but that's not how a lot of these studios work. I want to be able to set them up with as much success in whatever industry they choose to pursue. Because also remember, I've mentioned this before, I do train recreation through elite level dancers. I do work with recreation through professional dancers, but most of the dancers that I work with and most of the dancers that I promote on my channel, they are not professional. They are pre-professional. But it's just something to really note that I'm not going to force them to pursue a professional career in something they're not passionate about either, right? Not all of them want to be dancers when they're older. So what do I do with that time to make their time valuable and they learn something outside of dance, but also learn something that is relevant to dance? So that's my really big push educationally that I'm really studying right now. And so some of that may be a reflection of how I analyze choreography, because I apply that to myself as well. So that's how I would best answer that question. There's probably many more things I've forgotten, so I apologize for that. But I really do enjoy all the different avenues that I am with right now. So next question is, what do you mean when you say pocket? If it's all right, could you explain that? So I believe I left a comment explaining what this means, but I feel like more people may have this question. So I do use the term pocket often. I will say I may be using it a little bit too often for what I'm looking at, so I apologize for that. So pocket in a music context, let's start with that there. So pocket in music, it derives from the funk era, the jazz era, but more so the funk, where when you have a band and they're playing, right, there's a heartbeat or there's a groove that is being ridden by that band, and sometimes you feel it, right? There's like a heartbeat that's taking place, right? There's like this drive that's happening. That's called when a band is in the pocket. Like they are in their music, right? So that's like the musical term based on what I've researched. These are very broad. So please be curious about these things and please Google them and please look through this information. And I would love to hear discussions on this and what you personally find with it. But that's like a super broad, very, very, very broad general definition of what being in the pocket means for music. Now with dance, this, I will say this is not my own verbiage. This is the verbiage of, his name is Castro. He is a popping educator based out of New York. He is somebody that he has taken a lot of time, life experience, as well as a lot of time studying and understanding what these terms mean and what they mean in the funk style, and really trying to preserve the culture of popping from its inception. So I want to let you know that. So my answer to this is not really, I learned this from him. So there is a chance I may have some verbiage wrong, so I apologize to him personally if I do get it wrong a little bit, but also I will attach his Instagram if you want to look. He has such a plethora of information regarding to some terms outside of just being in the pocket. So being in the pocket in dance is the analytical version of it is very similar to the music one, but it's hitting the sounds right before the sound disappears. So a lot of times people would say being in the pocket is hitting right when the sound hits the middle of the beat. That's not true. If you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's like the dancer choreography realm, right? That's what we learn. But whenever you're hitting a rhythm, like you want to ride the rhythm before the beat disappears. So instead of going, you're gonna go, I don't know if I can do it. It's like a, so you're riding it right before the sound fully drifts off or fully leaves of the ear, right? And I think that's like the most accurate way that I can personally describe it, that has made the most sense to me. There's other facets that he uses to justify this. There's certain there's like a 1 and a 3 pocket, a 2 and a 4 pocket, and then hitting in eighths, hitting in sixteenths, hitting in whole counts. There's a lot of that is used. I have notes on it, but I just don't have them with me, so I'm sorry. And I don't want to keep talking on it when I'm not 100% like confident in what I remember from the notes I took. But I can be confident, like the best way to apply being in the pocket as a dancer is when you're listening or you know what sound your movement's supposed to go on, at least in funk styles. This is the scope of that. You want to hit it right before the sound disappears. Not because like if a sound has this little swoop, you want to hit it about right here, not in the center, because that's not hitting it in the pocket. You're hitting it on beat, not in the pocket, you know. So there's a little difference there, and it helps with your grooving. So grooves are like, they originate from the torso, right? It's your flavor. It's it's your essence in your pocket, how you carry yourself within the style. And each style has a different groove that's affiliated with that. With house, you have a jack. With light feet, you have a rock and a bounce, which is similar to breaking. But also, I mean, a lot of that can be stemmed differently depending on who you ask in the community. So all of these answers that I'm saying for this particular question, please, if you know people in your respective community of style that you're doing, that's the perfect person to ask what this question means. And if they don't know it, then that means that they have an opportunity to grow too. For me, I feel like there's so much more information to learn just from this term, and I will do the best that I can to try to continue to grow myself in understanding various aspects of it across the entire dance world, not just in funk styles. So that's my one note in how I can best answer that question. Okay, so my next question is, how can you be a choreographer when you dance so stiff? So I feel like this was targeted to me in that a lot of my videos that I have on my channel are from a long time ago, especially like 5 years plus, because I used to be very active back in like 2015, 2016 especially. I was very stiff. I was. A lot of things that I'm talking about now, I was not doing back then. So I completely agree with you. Your girl was stiff. Now, do I think that I'm as stiff as I was? No, I'm not nearly as stiff as I was, because I've taken a lot of classes, learned from a lot of people, reverse engineered a lot of grooves, a lot of pockets, to better understand a lot of styles outside of my comfort zone. So that is something that I can confidently say I have spent a long time within, especially since 2020. I've really tried to grow myself as a dancer so I can be better at performing and better at teaching newer styles or styles that I'm not super fluent in to my dancers, especially my visual learners. So that's a really big thing. Like, you're absolutely right, I was stiff. I'm not as stiff as I was, but that doesn't mean that you can't choreograph. So a choreographer has a different skill set than a dancer, right? So you can be a great dancer and a horrible choreographer, but an amazing choreographer and not the best dancer. I would put myself in the category of, I think I'm better as a choreographer than a dancer, just from experience. I've spent a much longer time choreographing. I've always had a desire to want to create concepts and wanting to help. I wanted to create certain ideas with music because I really care about music, and I love bringing it to life through dancing, because dancers are the visual representatives of music. So for me, I wanted to try to integrate that, but a lot of times my body could not physically do what I had in my head. So that's just a really interesting note to factor in too. And So just to answer that question, it's a different skill set. And does that mean that I feel that my choreography back in the day, I'm still proud of it, which is why I keep it up. And seeing where I was, I keep those videos up because seeing where I was to how I am now is such a blessing and such a godsend, that I'm blessed with the ability to have been able to grow as much as I did just in that span of those years. And I'm not done growing yet. So even if I still look a little stiff in some styles, please be gracious to me. I am probably aware that I am stiff because there are some choreographies that I learned that sometimes it's the choreographer's intention to make it look that way. Other times it's my lack of fluency in the style. I am doing my best to try to be as fluent in as many styles as possible. It just takes time, you know? So, but my final question is, why don't you apply the opinions and corrections that you have towards these reactions to yourself as a dancer? So, to answer this question very, like in a short sentence, I do apply these corrections and opinions that I have to myself like I do to these dancers. It's straight empathy. Most of it stems from I've experienced working with dancers. Now, have I experienced working with 100 dancers? No, but I've worked with 30. So it is a lot to factor in. And because of, like I said, with my background with HHI, I have been trained to know what to look for, to properly, objectively adjudicate the skills and the performance, because they are separate, and what is judged. And so having that background helps me be able to know what I'm looking for a little bit easier, even though it's not an HHI routine. There's still some things that they do say, like, hey, it's really good to make sure you have levels throughout your routine, not just one place. Or, hey, it's good to make your dance like a heartbeat. You don't want it to all be the same level of intensity. And also, your costume matters. If you're wearing something that just does not match what you're bringing to the table over here, that can play a role as well in the how we can see your investment. Because remember, when you watch routines, you don't understand the background of what they're doing. We don't have that opportunity. Whenever somebody comes on stage and they perform, I'm not given a background information on how they created the piece, why they chose the songs they did, what it stands for. I have to figure all of that out while I'm watching it. And so that's why I take the approach that I do with these, which may be why I can be wrong sometimes on what the concept is, because it could stem from a cultural difference, which is why I love the discussions, because you guys inform me of those things, and I feel like I grow so much more that way. But also I'm looking at the content. I'm looking at the music relationship to the content. And I think it's really important to be able to know that, yes, you can be one of the best crews in the world, but that doesn't mean you're perfect either, right? There's some crews that follow a criteria so well in one competition, but they may struggle in other aspects of other criteria at another competition. Not all competitions are the same, just like not all TV shows are the same. SWF looks for very different things than HHI may, or World of Dance may, or Vibe, or Body Rock, or your local dance showcase, or busking or something, The general public sometimes looks for different criteria than, somebody or from an Olympic leveled competition. Both are fine, and with people who have opinions, but they may not be super fluent in that particular field, that's called being a layman, right? So I would say that for myself, I'm a musical layman, meaning that I'm not a professional musician, but I can listen to music and know if it's of decent quality or not. Just like all of us listen to so much music, most of us probably listen to so much music in our car rides, if you ride the car, or if you're listening to something on the airplane or on your commute. Like, we listen to stuff. Sometimes it's a podcast, sometimes it's actual music, right? So I want us, so a lot of us are actually more musical laymen. Like, we know if a song is trash or not, you know what I mean? And I feel like we all kind of unify together, but sometimes it takes that one person to be like, yo, this wasn't it, and everyone's like, yeah, that wasn't it, So I would say that everybody, the best thing that I can do to answer this question is, I always assume that there's people, every person that I talk to, I've been trying my best to always assume that they probably know something that I don't, because I only know so much. I have so much life yet to live, and I'm probably not even going to scratch the surface of all there is to know about these things, and all I can do is my best, right? So to answer the question, I do apply these opinions and corrections towards myself. Sometimes it takes years for them to actually take effect, or it's because of who I'm working with. Some of these corrections I give to these crews are because they're professional crews. So there's a certain expectation that comes with being a professional. There's a certain fluency you need to have if you're going to be paid to do it, right? If you're an educator, there's a certain responsibility that you're given because you're educating other people. So that means you need to have some fluency of the craft that you're choosing to educate on, right? And I think that's just across the board in any industry. And then but does that mean that I'm going to tell my crew or like my dancers whenever they're working on a piece, they may be focusing on different things? Does that mean that it's completely neglected from critiques? No, they get critiqued at competitions all the time, but they also get complimented at competitions all the time, just like I do here. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with providing feedback, especially if I'm putting myself in stating, hey, I'm reacting and I'm analyzing. So I'm providing feedback here, but also I don't give these feedbacks with the expectation that the people who are in these routines are going to look at it and go, wow, thank you. You know, I really make these videos just so to kind of help provide a sense of context of somebody who empathizes with the journey. I may not empathize in the exact same way, but there's certain things that I can relate to regardless of the scale of the exposure of the thing, if that makes sense. So that's why I make these, is that there's probably somebody out there that wants to be in a crew one day, or who wants to choreograph one day, or who wants to be more knowledgeable in this one day. And if I'm able to help them, I would love to do that, because one reason why I'm a teacher is because I've always wanted to be a teacher that a lot of times I didn't really have. Granted, I had great teachers, but then I also didn't have some not so great teachers too, and they taught me how not to teach, you know, and I think there's something to really, really pinpoint there, right? So all in all, that would be my general answer to that question, is that the answer is I do apply those things to myself because it comes from myself, because I see it in myself, which is why I'm more sensitive to it when I see it in other places. And also because of what I've trained in, I'm trained to look for those things too, which is why I point them out. So, and people who want to be successful in creating good crew choreography, those are some really cool indicators of if a crew does something right, here's why they did it right, or oh, it makes sense why they may have chosen to be more unison here, or you know, it does feel like they were unison a little too long, let's talk about it. All of those things are fine, because at the end of the day, dance is dance, and there's so much artistry and so many different perspectives that we get to see. And I'm always so thankful that I'm in a position where I've been able to steward what I've been doing for so long, that I'm in a position where I can even provide anything decent. You know, for me, I consider it that it's really a gift from God that I'm able to steward these things, and I'm just thankful that I have other people that I'm able to help, and I just want to help people, you know, and you guys end up growing me too in this process, and that's why I want to keep making these. And so all that to say, I'm very thankful that I'm, you know, this is a great milestone, hitting 1,000 subscribers, because that's 1,000 people that I would have never had discussions with if I didn't start these, you know. And so I'm very excited to keep going, and if I keep growing, then praise God, right? But if I don't, if I lose subscribers, that's okay too, you know, because I make these because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be about me, it should be about dance and seeing the beauty in it, you know. And so, but yeah, thank you guys again for watching. I know this was, I hope if I asked your question, I hope I answered it okay, or in a way that you were looking for. And if I didn't, hopefully I'll be able to answer it in a different way, or more concise next time. And those of you who may have some reservations about me when it comes to my dancing quality in comparison to what I talk about, regardless of the accuracy of it, I am growing. I am continuing to dance. I'm continuing to grow and learn and educate myself on various styles. There's some styles I'm very fluent in that I still don't know enough, you know, and I don't consider myself a master of any craft. I consider myself a student who's just been doing it longer than some people, you know, and I think that's okay. So, but thank you again, and I will check you guys in the next video.